Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session on the anterior abdominal wall and inguinal canal. If I want to draw a sagittal section, rather I would say a parasagittal section of the anterior abdominal wall and name the layers and also visualize the inguinal canal, this is how the diagram can be drawn. So this is layer 1, which is made up of skin. This is layer 2, which is made up of superficial fascia. Superficial fascia. And as all of you know that layer 3 is directly the external oblique muscle. Is external oblique muscle. Because there is no deep fascia in the anterior abdominal wall. And the reason there is no deep fascia in the anterior abdominal wall is these organs of the anterior abdominal wall, like stomach and all, they protrude when we eat. And with every respiration also, the anterior abdominal wall structures protrude. The anterior abdominal wall protrudes because the diaphragm descends, and therefore we cannot have a deep fascia. So skin is layer 1, superficial fascia is layer 2, and external oblique is layer 3. This external oblique lower end folds on itself to form inguinal ligament. To form inguinal ligament. Layer 4 is internal oblique muscle. Layer 4 is internal oblique muscle. Layer 5 is transversus abdominis muscle. So this is a parasagittal section. What I'm drawing is a parasagittal section of abdomen. So layer 5 is transversus abdominis muscle. Layer 6 is fascia transversalis. Layer 6 is fascia transversalis. Layer 7 is extra peritoneal connective tissue. And layer 8 is parietal peritoneum. Layer 8 is parietal peritoneum. So here lies the inguinal canal. Now here, along with this, what is happening is this internal oblique slightly is anterior to the inguinal canal. Also, it unites with the transversus abdominis to form conjoint tendon. Okay, so this is conjoint tendon. This can be, we can layer it as 10, and inguinal ligament, we'll name it as 11. Now, with this background, let us start writing what forms the anterior abdominal wall, the boundaries of the inguinal canal. Inguinal canal, all of us know, is a oblique. It is a oblique structure which is 4 centimeter or 1.5 inches long, which runs from the internal ring to the external ring. Now I write the anterior wall of the inguinal canal. Anterior wall of the inguinal canal is formed by 1, 2, and 3. Okay. And in the lateral 1/3, by 4. 4, that is internal oblique. Okay. Now, posterior wall. Posterior wall is formed by 6, 7, 8. What is 6, 7, 8? Fascia transversalis, extraperitoneal connective tissue, and parietal peritoneum. So 6, 7, 8. And in medial 2/3, it is formed by 10. What is 10? Conjoint tendon. Conjoint. The roof. Roof is formed by 4 and 5. Okay, it is formed by internal oblique. You can see here, roof is formed by 4 and 5. Internal oblique plus transversus abdominis. And floor. Floor is formed by 11. What is 11? Inguinal ligament. Inguinal. In exam, you cannot write 1, 2, 3. Huh? You will have to write that. If you can write 1, 2, 3, but you will have to write something like this. In the exam, if you want to write, you will have to write something like this. One second. You will have to write something like this. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then write the names. You cannot just write 1, 2, 3 like this. So again, I'll repeat: anterior wall formed by 1, 2, and 3. That is skin, superficial fascia, and external oblique. In lateral 1/3, there is internal oblique. Posterior wall formed by 6, 7, 8. That is fascia transversalis, the extraperitoneal connective tissue, and parietal peritoneum. Roof formed by internal oblique and transversus abdominis. Posterior wall also in the medial 2/3 formed by conjoint tendon. Roof is formed by this. This is forming the floor is formed by the roof, floor, anterior wall 3 structure, posterior wall 3 structures. Anterior wall 3 structures plus 1, posterior wall 3 structures plus 1, roof 2 structures, floor 1. So that is how the inguinal canal is. Inguinal canal, which is 4.4 centimeter long or 1.5 inch long, and it runs from deep ring. From the deep ring, this deep ring is in the fascia transversalis. From deep ring to superficial ring, this superficial ring is in the external oblique muscle. Superficial ring is in the external oblique muscle. This deep ring is above the mid-inguinal point. And the superficial ring is 1 centimeter above and lateral to the pubic tuber. Okay. Now I have told you the boundaries, roof and floor of the inguinal canal, teaching you the structures lying in the anterior abdominal wall. Now, before we proceed to the further details, of the inguinal canal, we have to cover one more short topic, and that short topic can come as a question in your exam. and also you should know it, and that is the rectus sheath. What we had drawn was a parasagittal section. In the parasagittal section, what we saw, there was skin, then superficial fascia, then external oblique, then transversus abdominis, and then internal oblique and transversus abdominis, and all other layers. Fascia transversalis, parietal peritoneum, and now what happens? So this is in the parasagittal. In the center, or still on in the center, of course, the rectus muscle will also not be there. Just in the side of it, there are two recti. These two recti, these muscles, they take origin from the pubic symphysis. Okay, they take origin from here. There are these two muscles, and then there is this lower margin of the ribs, and the two recti are like this. I have shown here a significant gap between the two recti. All this big gap doesn't exist actually, just to show you that there are two recti. But there are tendinous intersections. There are these tendinous intersections on the uh, on these two rectus abdominis muscles. So this is one, and this is another rectus abdominis muscle. Okay, and in between is just this linea alba thing, which where the fibers are intersecting. So this plane is the easiest plane for a surgeon to open abdomen, to cut exactly between the two rectus abdominis and open the abdomen, easiest and fastest. But because there is no muscle in between, only the fibers are intervening, this section can further lead to abdominal hernia. So a patient may have some intestinal obstruction, we may cut and we will save the patient, but the patient after few days will develop abdominal hernia because we have cut in between, and their healing will not be so firm, because anyways there is always a chance of herniation between the two recti. So that is one thing. Another thing, you must have heard of 6-pack and 8-pack. Okay, so if people exercise and they this muscles, they hypertrophy in this area, they hypertrophy in this area, but this is not a muscle. Okay, this is a fibrous tissue. So there are these three fibrous tissue. So 1, 2, 3. So those who do lot of exercise, they develop 6-pack, and those who do furthermore, they develop 8-pack abdomen. That is because there are tendinous intersections in the rectus abdominis muscle. So when we do lot of exercise of the rectus abdominis muscle, lot of abdominal crunches, the muscle hypertrophies, but in between this area, there is no muscle. There are just fibrous tissue that doesn't hypertrophy, and that's why the muscle blows up. And then there are the 6-pack and 8-pack. Now, all these other muscles which we were talking, external oblique takes its origin like this from the top, and then goes and gets inserted on the iliac crest. It will go and get inserted on the iliac crest. Then along its lower border is inguinal ligament. Of course, the pubic symphysis will be lower down. I'm just giving you an example. So if I draw the iliac crest here, okay, the inguinal ligament will be lower down like this. And from the internal oblique, exactly opposite. The internal oblique takes origin from below and goes. So this fibers of internal oblique and external oblique are going crisscross. External oblique fibers are coming from above, downwards, forwards. Internal oblique are going upwards. Internal oblique fibers are going upwards. Okay. And then comes the third muscle, which is transversus abdominis. It runs like this. So what is happening is formation of a mesh. A mesh is being formed so that abdominal organs don't herniate. Okay. But then here lower down is scrotum, and the testes have to be placed there, and that is the reason there is a canal over here. There is a canal over here through which the testes come and they lie here. And therefore, because there is a canal, there is a chance of herniation also. Now, I said the external oblique and all, they come like this. Now, what happens in the center is it turns into a fascia. So if I take a cross section, in the upper part, what I see is there is one rectus abdominis of one side, rectus abdominis of other side, and this is external oblique, and external oblique goes like this. Okay. Now this is external oblique, and this is the external oblique aponeurosis. Okay. This is the aponeurosis of the external oblique. So this is how the situation is there in the upper one third. Now, because this external oblique is the only muscle which takes origin higher up, in the upper one third we only see that muscle. Now what happens in middle one third? So this is in upper one third. Let us see what happens in middle one third. In the middle one third, again external oblique goes in the front. This is one rectus abdominis. This is another rectus abdominis. Okay. Then there is internal oblique also. This internal oblique, as it approaches the rectus abdominis, splits into two layers. One layer goes in the front, another layer goes in the back. That means internal oblique splits, its fascia splits, its one layer of the fascia goes anterior, another layer goes posterior. While the transversus abdominis, its fascia remains posterior. So this is how the situation is in middle one third. And in lower one third, what happens is, if this is one rectus abdominis, another rectus abdominis, external oblique goes in the front, internal oblique goes in the front, and transversus abdominis fascia also goes in the front. So external oblique, internal oblique, and transversus abdominis. All three, they come in the front. What is the reason behind this? The reason behind this is in the middle one third, it is the movement is more of blasting type, and in lower one third, the abdomen has a tendency to bulge. So all of us see that our lower one third normally bulges because all the weight, all the organ weight comes on the lower one third. And therefore, to support the rectus abdominis, all the three fascia come anteriorly in the lower one third. While in middle one third, whenever we do breathing, we do Kapalbhati pranayam, all those things, what happens is there is a support needed anteriorly also and posteriorly also. So internal oblique splits goes anteriorly and posteriorly. External oblique stays anteriorly, transverse abdominis posterior. Lower one third, all of them come anterior. Now, what are the contents of the rectus sheath? What are the contents of the rectus sheath? One, whenever we write contents, we should write always muscles, arteries, veins, nerves, lymphatic. Whenever we want to. So muscles, we know rectus abdominis. Along with that, there is another muscle, pyramidalis. Okay, very a small muscle taking origin from here. Arteries, there is superior epigastric artery, right? The internal thoracic artery divides in the seventh intercostal space into superior epigastric and musculophrenic. And then there is inferior epigastric artery. There is inferior epigastric artery. The significance of these two arteries is one artery is coming from subclavian, okay, and another is coming from the iliacs, which are going to supply the lower limb, and this is coming from subclavian, which is supplying the upper limb. So in the rectus sheath, we see an anastomosis of the arteries supplying upper limb and lower. Then there is veins will be of the same name. Okay, superior epigastric vein and inferior epigastric vein. The nerves we see the lower six thoracic nerves, lower six. So what is the function of the rectus sheath? What is the function of the rectus sheath? The function of the rectus sheath is that it basically maintains the strength of the anterior abdominal, maintains the strength of the anterior. Okay, and it kind of checks the bowing. There is a rectus abdominis there. It may have a tendency of bowing like this. So because it supports it, it checks the bowing of the rectus abdominis muscle, and it just increases the efficiency of that muscle. So it checks the bowing of the rectus abdominis muscle. Now with these details, now we again switch back. We again switch back to our main topic of the day. It was inguinal canal, and inguinal canal, already I have discussed with you what forms the anterior abdominal wall, the anterior wall of the inguinal canal, what forms the posterior wall of the inguinal canal, what forms the roof of the inguinal canal, and what forms the floor of the inguinal canal. Now, let us check the sex differences in the inguinal canal. The sex differences, it is larger in males than in females. So because of this, the inguinal hernia will be more seen in males than in females. If you see the femoral canal, it was larger in females than in males. So femoral hernia is seen more commonly in females than in males. What are the structures passing? What are the structures passing through the inguinal canal? Through the inguinal canal. Now, in both, in males and females. In males, it is the spermatic cord, and in females, it is the it is the round ligament of uterus. Round ligament of uterus. And the this nerve, ilioinguinal nerve, ilioinguinal nerve, ilioinguinal nerve in both the sexes, it is there, male as well as in the males as well as in female. Both the sexes, it is there. So content is spermatic cord in males, round ligament of uterus in females, and in both the sexes there is ilioinguinal. Now we move on to the males. What is there? What is there inside the spermatic cord? The contents of the spermatic cord. Okay, the contents of the spermatic cord. Now the main content of the spermatic cord, of course, will be the ductus deferens, right? The ductus deferens. So number one comes ductus deferens. Hmm? Ductus deferens. Now, where is the spermatic cord going? The spermatic cord is going towards the testes. So therefore, definitely it will be carrying the testicular artery. Testicular artery. And there is this cremasteric muscle which is also going. So therefore, it will there will be cremasteric artery also. Okay? There will be cremasteric artery also. I am talking about arteries first. Huh? Let me finish off with arteries. So testicular artery, cremasteric artery. Then this whole ductus deferens has so many structures. To supply that, we need one more artery. So the artery to ductus deferens. Artery to ductus deferens. Now there will be no testicular vein. Instead of testicular vein, there will be pampiniform plexus. Pampiniform plexus. Pampiniform plexus. So this comes as a MCQ. This comes as a MCQ in the postgraduate entrance examination. That following are the contents of the inguinal canal except testicular artery, cremasteric artery, testicular vein, because this pampiniform plexus forms 4 veins at the external ring. It forms 2 veins at the internal ring. And after these 2 veins, they unite. Okay, the 2 veins they unite to form testicular vein beyond the deep ring. Okay, so at deep ring we have 2 veins formed from the plexus. At superficial ring where we have 4 veins formed from the plexus. Okay, so at superficial ring there are 4 veins. At deep ring there are 2 veins, and beyond the deep ring these 2 unite form testicular vein. So testicular vein is not a content of inguinal canal. Is not a content of the inguinal canal. Now, apart from all of this, what is there? There are lymphatics. Okay, there are lymphatics from the testes. The lymphatics from the testes, they are going and draining into the aortic lymph nodes, para-aortic lymph nodes around the aorta at almost L1, L2 level, L2 level, because testes have descended down from that level. So in case of cancer of testes, USG of abdomen is mandatory because the lymphatic drainage of the testes is to the para-aortic lymph nodes, which is at L2 level. So these lymphatics will be. Then there is a nerve. What is this nerve? The genital branch. The genital branch of genitofemoral nerve. The genital branch of the genitofemoral nerve, and there will be sympathetic plexus. Sympathetic plexus. There will be sympathetic plexus. Then the last content, and that is the remnants of processus vaginalis. Remnants of the processus vaginalis. Now, what is this processus vaginalis? What is this processus vaginalis? I'll explain it to you. What happens is, this is the peritoneal cavity, developing peritoneal cavity, and this peritoneal cavity goes down into the scrotum. So this is the scrotum. This is abdomen. So this processus vagina, this is a peritoneal cavity. This is the peritoneal cavity, and this peritoneum extends into the scrotum as processus vaginalis. And the testis is here. So then the testis invaginates it, and this processus vaginalis, it will form the tunica vaginalis. Tunica vaginalis. Now this processus vaginalis is, as it is coming, it is passing through the deep ring and the superficial. Now what happens after birth? This gets cut off. The processus peritoneal cavity gets disconnected from processus vaginalis. So this remains as the processus vaginalis will form tunica vaginalis, okay, around the throat, along the testes, around the testes. Now, what if this cutoff doesn't happen? If this cutoff doesn't happen, then the abdominal organs herniate. They herniate from deep ring to superficial ring into the scrotum, and this is called as indirect hernia. This is called as indirect hernia. Now let us discuss the coverings of the spermatic cord. Coverings of the spermatic. Now what happens is, let us again go to the parasagittal section. Now this is fascia transversalis. An opening in the fascia transversalis is the deep ring. Beyond fascia transversalis is transversus abdominis. Then here is internal oblique. Then here is external oblique. So again, external oblique, internal oblique, transversus abdominis. Now this is the, as the cord passes, now this is the cord passing, spermatic cord passing. As the cord passes through the deep ring, as the cord passes through the deep ring gives it a covering. Okay, the deep ring, as it passes through the deep ring, which is in the fascia transversalis gives it a covering, and this covering is called as internal spermatic fascia. That means internal spermatic fascia is derived from fascia transversalis. Then it passes uh, between the transversus abdominis and internal oblique, which are uniting to form the cremasteric muscle, the fibers of which are uniting to form the cremasteric muscle, and they unite and they give the second layer. They give the second layer of covering, this red thing, which is cremasteric fascia. The first was internal spermatic fascia. And then coming to the third, that is external oblique. This external oblique opening is the superficial ring. So as the spermatic cord passes from here, external oblique also gives it a covering, which is called as external spermatic fascia. External spermatic fascia. That means fascia transversalis covers it as internal spermatic fascia. Internal oblique transversus abdominis give cremasteric fascia, and external oblique give external spermatic fascia. This is how internal spermatic fascia is derived from fascia transversalis,